Dear brothers, I feel privileged to appear here in the Grand Lodge of Tennessee and have the opportunity to convey the brotherly regards of Irfan, meaning wisdom in English, Lodge number 25, operating under the Grand Lodge of Turkey. Before starting my presentation, I would like to inform you that I have gathered this info about history of Freemasonry in Turkey from broad researches of late Brother Tamer, as well as other brothers, Bob Name's World of Freemasonry, Cambridge University Press, as well as some other resources that you may refer if you would like to get more info about the subject. As you well know, Freemasonry in Tennessee began in 1789 when St. Tammany Lodge number 1 was organized in Nashville under dispensation from the Grand Lodge of North Carolina. On the other hand, a lodge, which name is lost unfortunately, operated in Istanbul, somewhere near Galata Tower, founded probably around the same era, around 1721, by Levantines, being mainly Genoese people living in the tower quarters. The first known Turkish Mason is Said Çelebi, ambassador to France and later Grand Vizier. The French officer Comte de Bonneval, after some intrigues in the French court during the reign of Louis XIV, emigrated to England and later came to Turkey to organize the Turkish army. In fact, Ottoman army back then. Comte de Bonneval took a Turkish name and became Kumbarasi Ahmet Osman Pasha, that it is said he was a Mason as well. Another known Mason in this period is Ibrahim Müteferrika, who together with Said Çelebi started the first printing press used by Muslim subjects of the Ottoman Empire. So as you can see, Masons have started the first printing in the Ottoman Empire, first print business, which is very important to, distribute the knowledge. During that period, Alexander Drummond, the British consul in Aleppo, then being a part of the empire, now in Syria, as you know, had been appointed as district Grand Master for the Orient by the Grand Lodge of England. Later in 1764, Dr. Dionysius Menes has been appointed as district Grand Master for Asiatic Turkey and Armenia. In 1786, a second charter had been given by the Lodge of Saint-Jean de Cos in Marseille to the Lodge Saint-Jean de Cos des Nations Réunies in my hometown, Izmir, as known as Smyrna back then. As you can see, I'm from Smyrna, Turkey, but not Smyrna, Tennessee here. Unfortunately, this first chapter has been lost during the Great Fire of Izmir. According to the correspondence, this lodge had been consecrated after 1751 and before 1778 and was closed in 1826. I'm sorry about the years, but I'm just trying to give you a brief idea about that period. It's 17th century briefly. In the last decade of the 18th century, Selim III's mother, Selim III was an Ottoman emperor. Nakşidil Sultan happened to be the cousin of Josephine, Napoleon Bonaparte's wife. Under her influence, lodges from different obediences prospered in Ottoman Empire. However, in 1826, Mahmud II abolished the Janissaries, which used to be Ottoman army, to create a modern army and outlawed the order of Bektashis to which they belonged. Janissaries mostly belonged to Bektashis, and the Sultan wanted to just change the army and turn it into a modern one. Somehow, due to the lack of knowledge, Freemasonry had been considered as a kind of Bektashism, and as a consequence, it was also closed and the non-Freemasons were sent into exile. Although Freemasonry in Turkey can be traced into the 18th century, for much of that time it was limited to lodges under the jurisdiction of foreign Grand Lodges, and there was no independent Turkish Grand Lodge. This changed in 19th century in 1856, when the first Grand Lodge was established. Sultan Murad V was a member of the lodge, becoming the first and only Ottoman Sultan to join. The first Grand Lodge was banned in 1876 by Murad's successor, Sultan Abdülhamid II, after 1839 with the unofficial permission by the Grand Vizier. Freemasonry underwent a slow revival in Turkey. Here I would like to denote that the archives of lodges in Turkey prior to the foundation of the Grand Lodge in 1909 were in the hands of foreign obediences, and these documents were lost due to wars, persecution, fires, etc. It has been only possible to reconstruct the history of Freemasonry in Turkey through a research in the archives of the Grand Orient de France, preserved from Germans during the occupation in Bibliothèque Nationale Française, 1,900-ish pages are microfilmed, plus the archives of the Grand Lodges of England, Ireland, and Scotland. Unfortunately, the Greek and Italian Masonic archives had been destroyed during the German occupation, and therefore we cannot gather any info from those that they have been destroyed. And during the Crimean War, I don't know if you have any idea about that war, but it's not a matter of the subject of my speech tonight. The arrival of British, French, and Piemontese expeditionary forces and diplomats in Istanbul and Izmir, my hometown, in 1856, this has led to an explosion of lodges under a variety of obediences. There are many foreign diplomats, soldiers coming different countries, so the presence of various lodges, they were not regular, but they have brought part of their lodges, and they were operating independently. In 1857, the short-lived Grand Lodge de Turquie was founded in Izmir by the Grand Orient of France. After the end of Crimean War, with the departure of those soldiers and diplomats, this Grand Lodge came to an end as well. At the time, this is a bit, I wouldn't say funny, but tragic funny. There was also a creation of an irregular Irish Grand Lodge. In 1856, Captain Atkinson, an Irish officer in the 47th British Regiment, claiming to possess an Irish warrant, created 3 lodges in Izmir and the Grand Lodge of the Ancient and Honorable Fraternity of Free and Accepted Masons of Turkey. And the constitution of this Grand Lodge is in the Irish archives. This was, however, this is what I tried to mention as being tragic funny. This was a fraudulent commercial enterprise. Not many people knowing about Masons, and people thought to be brothers and joined him. And Atkinson initiated some 200 Masons, and then disappeared with funds. So it was not a very good beginning, Masonry in Turkey. And however, at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th centuries, there were in total 11 English, 7 Scottish, 2 Irish, 1 Polish, 2 Spanish, 5 German, 15 Italian, 2 Greek, 6 French, and 1 Hungarian lodges, plus a few chapters attached to the English, Scottish, and Irish lodges in Istanbul, Izmir, and Salonika, now being a part of Greece now, alone. By the way, there were many lodges in the rest of the big cities of the empire too. I mean, in the provinces of Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Bulgaria, Romania, and Macedonia, and also in different cities of Anatolia. But as they were not relevant to the creation of the Grand Lodge of Turkey, I mean, they were not included in my study now. According to the French historian Thierry Zarcon, the period from 1908 to 1918 could be called the Masonic state. The Union and Progress Party in power used Freemasonry in its foreign relations. Deputations of Mason parliamentarians went to Italy, France, Hungary, and Germany. The Freemason deputies claimed that with their effort, democracy, that is the French slogan of liberty, equality, and fraternity, was prevailing now in Turkey, and that the European powers should be of assistance. The Albanians had revolted against the Ottoman rule, and the Italian parliament was about to vote an aid program for the rebels. However, after the intervention of the Grand Lodge of Turkey, the Italian Freemasons in the parliament were effective, and the motion failed to be carried. So, I mean, a letter from Grand Lodge of Turkey to Grand Lodge of Italy asking to, reject this motion, and it failed, so they didn't help the rebels. However, 11 months later, at the end of 1911, after Italy's expedition to Libya, the same scenario was repeated, but naturally this time, the Grand Orient of Italy could not act against its own government. I mean, this has created some friction between the, lodges, but that's the history. Finally, the Grand Lodge came back in 1909 in Istanbul under a new administration. On March 3rd, 1909, the dormant Supreme Council of Turkey, I mean, it was dormant since 1861, was revived, and this Supreme Council first consecrated 4 Turkish lodges. These 4 lodges plus 3 Italian, 2 French, 1 Spanish, and 2 Egyptian lodges assembled to form the Grand Lodge of Turkey on July 13th, 1909, and elected its first Grand Master, the Minister of the Interior, Mehmet Talat Pasha, who later became the Grand Vizier, Prime Minister. The Grand Lodge was concentrated by the Supreme Council. This Grand Lodge gave charters to a total of 66 lodges, mainly in Turkey, but also in Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Greece, Lebanon, and Palestine, which were all part of the empire back then. And then in 1935, the year when Freemasonry decided to hibernate, 3 ministers, the president of the parliament, more than 60 deputies, and many state governors were Freemasons in Turkey. And also, Atatürk, the founder of modern republic, maybe you have heard of his name, and his private doctor, Brother Kemal Oka, was a past Grand Master. And in 1935, English, Germans, and Russians transformed Turkey into a vast stage for propaganda and espionage. The Nazi propaganda machine was also stressing the Judeo-Masonic danger. The Ministry of the Interior, Sukri Kaya, a 33rd Scottish Rite Mason, in order to curb these activities, passed a law from Parliament closing all clubs and societies. Freemasonry, however, it was not mentioned in the text, but the minister warned his brothers that it would be wiser to stop the activity of Freemasonry by its own free will. That's how things happened, and the reason why Freemasonry was able to recover its buildings after the war. I think it was a wise decision. And on the other hand, all lodges did not close. The Supreme Council continued its activity behind closed doors, even chartered 3 new lodges. Craft lodges met at the homes of brothers. And the police showed a knowing tolerance to all of this, with the tacit approval of the President of the Republic, back then İsmet İnönü, who even gave a little financial aid to the Supreme Council. And there was an awakening starting in 1948 when Turkey wished to join the UN. Turkish diplomats were told that Turkey was not a very democratic nation and that even Freemasonry was closed, and it was as it is in all totalitarian regimes. Then the president approached his personal doctor, Supreme Grand Master, Brother Kemal Oke, which I have just mentioned, the same doctor who looked after Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the nation, and told him that the time to resume official working had come. In 1948, lodges under the Supreme Council started to labor in Istanbul and my hometown in Izmir, and in 1949 in Ankara, the capital city. A troubled period started with lodges trying to liberate themselves from the Supreme Council's rule. I mean, it happens around the world. The Grand Lodges of Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir were created, and finally those 3 Grand Lodges united on December 16, 1956 to create a totally independent Grand Lodge of Turkey. After the initial recognition by some American and European Grand Lodges in 1959, an official deputation by the Grand Lodge of Scotland visited Turkey. The recognition process was delayed to 1963 due to unfortunate military coup of 1960. And most of the regular Grand Lodges have recognized the Grand Lodge of Turkey except England and Ireland. And then in order to satisfy, the Grand Lodge of Turkey was reconsecrated by the Grand Lodge of Scotland in 1965. And this is why our Grand Officer's regalia is green in Turkey. And in 1970, the Grand Lodges of England and Ireland recognized Grand Lodge of Turkey too. And another, I wouldn't say incident, but interesting point that I would like to share with yourselves here is there has been a schism in 1965 where there was a continuous friction between the Supreme Council and the Grand Lodge because at the end of 1964, the Grand Secretary on his own gave a letter to Brother Süleyman Demirel, I will mention about him in a minute, stating that he was not a Freemason. The Grand Secretary was the senior warden of the lodge in which Demirel had been initiated in 1955. Demirel used this document against the fundamentalist wing in his political party. I mean, Brother Demirel was an active politician and he was running for the elections, but due to anti-Masonic fundamentalists, he wanted that letter claiming that he is not a Freemason. And, as I have just mentioned, the Grand Secretary on his own without asking anyone else and has given the letter, which has created, bad friction between brothers. And Demirel used this document against the fundamentalist wing in his political party, was thus elected to presidency of the party and reigned on Turkish politics until 2000, when he retired as President of the Republic. Despite the Supreme Council's secret opposition in 1965 Grand Master elections, the brother who issued this letter was elected. The Supreme Council preferred to election a brother who would be obedient to them and tried to cancel these elections. This led to a lot of turbulence in the ranks of Turkish Freemasons. Finally, a schism occurred with a small group of brothers creating a separate Grand Lodge, which later attached itself to the French Grand Orient today. And this irregular Grand Lodge has about 3,000 members, and it is in relations with a Turkish Women's Grand Lodge. I mean, it's got in Scottish Rite, you know, we don't accept humans, but this irregular part of Masons has relations with irregular Turkish Women's Grand Lodge, which also exists. This is a rather new body and has few hundred members organized in all major cities in Turkey. I mean, they are not under Scottish Rite, once more. Today, the Grand Lodge of Turkey has about 180 lodges in 10 cities with more than 15,000 active members. It is recognized by all regular Grand Lodges and is active promoting Freemasonry in the Balkans, Russia, and Turkic language-speaking former Soviet Union republics. We also have a research lodge that is publishing a quarterly research magazine, Mimar Sinan, meaning architect. Sinan, who is a very well-known architect in Turkish history. I mean, designing mosques, hammams, bridges, and that's why the name is named after him, and he was a real Mason. And since 1991, bi-monthly Masonic magazine Tesviye, meaning level in English, have been being printed in the name of the Grand Lodge of Turkey. I mean, dear brothers, in fact, the original research was much more detailed. I just wanted to wrap it up in order to fit in the time frame that I'm allocated and not to bore you anymore. And thank you all being present and listening to me. And I feel privileged to be here and being among my brothers. This is a great feeling. And, you know, wherever I go in the world, I mean, due to my profession, I travel extensively around the globe and I try to attend the lodges. And it feels very good, let me say, to have my brothers backing me up, and wherever I go, I never feel as a visitor, let me say. And you know, I have been doing business here in Nashville for the last 6 years, and I am truly impressed by the Southern hospitality. And being a part of Nashville, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you, being Nashvillians. And you know, that's all I have to say tonight, and thank you all.